Okay, hi. I'm doing this again because the video didn't record proper. It's like a weird lag between my mouth, ah ho ha hee ha, and the words that came out of it. As it appeared on the video, as it was heard through the video. So, I'm going over the books that I finished in the month of May 2020. And my goal had been my GoodReads goal for the year is set at 100. I've been moving along. I'm like, how great would it be? I'm not sure where this came from, but I'm like, how great would it be to finish that goal in half the time? So the goal is, let me see if the goal was, let me see if I can finish 100 books from January to the end of June. From beginning of January to the end of June. And last few months, I've been averaging like 15, 19, 18 books, whatever, different months. I'm like, oh, definitely feasible. I just have to keep up what I've been doing. Of course, being that we're in a pandemic and recently, um, uh, other, the whole thing with the police acting wild, which is not new, but it's come to a boiling point. There's been just so much to take in and consider. Also, just generally the way it was for the pandemic that people productivity has either decreased or shifted in ways. So, for whatever reason, or for many reasons, however you want to view it, I wasn't able to keep up that average of like somewhere in the teens for the month of May. I finished, I think it was 8 books in May. I counted as I did this previously. And so I'm just going to go off and read the books I finished um, as I finished them from earliest in May to the most recent finish at the end of May. And I'm currently reading about 18 books. Those books are different stages of near finished. One of them I might have finished yesterday, which was the end of the month, but I didn't. A couple other ones are like 50, maybe like one or two. Actually, maybe just the one is more than 50% done. Some others are more like 40-ish%. Some I maybe have only read a tenth of. Different stages of finished. So, um, the first book I read was the first book I finished in the month of May, last month, was Foxfire's story, Oral Tradition in Southern Appalachia, by the Foxfire Fund. And I didn't even know what the Foxfire Fund was until I read this. But it's a lovely, I guess, foundation that sets upon itself to keep record of tradition and folk tales, folk history in the region. Um, and it's been around for a few decades. So this is a collection of short stories and I guess not short stories, but folklore, different types of folklore or folk telling that gave a nice insight into the region and its history. What really pushed it up to 5 stars for me was at some point we got interviews that were um, retellings or tellings of how people dealt with or the aftermath of the 1918 pandemic. So that was really like fitting for the time. So I was like, this is definitely like I see the importance. I get the importance extra much right now. So that was 5 stars for me. Second book I read was You Are Obsolete by Matthew Klickstein. This book, all these books are off NetGalley. But this book, I was like, this book when I went to download it, there was some issue with um, the file. It wasn't complete. It was only like 2 pages. So I messaged NetGalley, and I had seen that on the NetGalley the ratings were low, mostly because people were not receiving the full book. But I also saw on Goodreads that the rating was also low, and it looked like there were more ratings on Goodreads than there were on NetGalley. But I was like, I don't know if it's just because people haven't read the book in its full, so I wanted to give it a full chance, and I still ended up giving it 2 stars. I appreciate that it was in Estonian, or not in Estonian, that it took place in Estonia, and that we had random phrases in Estonian being scattered throughout, but the story moved ridiculously fast, and it was like what was I supposed to feel some type of fright or some type of way about this story? I didn't. So someone's getting a package. I didn't. So that was fun for that. I gave that 2 stars. Next book I finished was The Secret Notebook by D.A. Aurelio. Oh, sorry, D.A. D'Aurelio. Next book I finished was The Secret Notebook by D.A. D'Aurelio. This was a middle grade book. Kind of a quick little secret conspiracy thing. It's middle grade, but I don't know if it reads more like an elementary school. I don't know what middle graders read. I know what I read when I was in middle grade, which probably really wasn't much, but also I don't know. I guess it depends on level. But regardless, maybe this is middle grade for elementary school students who are looking to challenge themselves. There wasn't necessarily a lot of challenging vocabulary per se, and the plot was relatively straightforward. But I enjoyed the story, and I gave it 4 stars. Yes, I gave it 4 stars. Next book I finished reading in the month of May was Murder to Music by Margaret Newman. This was a classic story, I guess being a new edition being printed. I think this is coming out of Agora Books, is the version I read. And it aged pretty well. I think it was a novel from the 50s. It aged pretty well, but it definitely dates itself, but not in a very obvious way. I mean, the climax of the story is primarily what dates the story. I guess also the technology people were using in the story, or the transportation and just some of the mannerisms, whatever. But for the most part, it aged pretty well, and it didn't need a bunch of crass language to deal with the issue or the motivation. Like it dealt with the. I mean, it dealt with what was the sensitive issue very solidly. Like no crass language was needed. No ahaha crass language and outright prejudice to show that it's something that people are prejudiced against. We didn't get that, and we didn't need it, and it was great, and I really enjoyed it. It was a quick read, so I would recommend it. 4 stars. The next book I finished in the month of May was The Southeast Native Plant Primer 225 Plants for an Earth Friendly Garden. And native plants, check. Close enough to my region, check. Plant book, check. Great layout, check. So I gave this 5 stars. And if I had a garden, I'd buy it. If I had a lot to plant things, I'd buy it so I could reference it all the time. 5 stars. And that was by Larry Mellenchamp. Next book I read was Houseplants for All, A Guide to Becoming a Perfect Plant Parent, Danae Horst. This book I felt was mostly geared towards beginners, or it was best suited for beginners because the plants that were touched on are kind of the plants. If there's a one of those kits, one of those guys, I know that meme about the kit to becoming a basic plant, whatever. A lot of these plants will be included, but also because a lot of these plants are classics. So yes, there are tips that you can take away from whatever um, level of familiarity you have with plants, but it's best for beginners. So I gave that 4 stars. Pictures were lovely though. Next book I read was Monopolized: Life in the Age of Corporate Power by David Dayen. I gave this one 5 stars because I felt really despondent. The the reality that every industry is horrifically monopolized. The history of lobbyists succeeding in getting respective regulations deregulated or gutted, so that they can continue accumulating money. And I feel like with the whole horrible mismanagement of the pandemic in the United States, with the horrible mismanagement of federal funds, but also it's like nothing is new at this point. But it's again another book that's appropriate for the times. So, gave this one 5 stars. I think everyone should read it. I enjoyed that the author. I enjoy when authors are like, "Oh, you want more on this topic? Read these other books. These other books are great." But also, like, here's my book too. So I enjoy that. So 5 stars for that book, must read. And then the last book I read was a book I finished just yesterday, early in the morning yesterday, like a.m., like 2 a.m. Actually, did I finish it yesterday or yeah, I finished it like in the early a.m. of the 31st, and that was "It Will Just Be Us." I think this book is coming out in September, and this is "It Will Just Be Us" by Joe Kaplan. So this is my first, probably one of my first gothic horrors, or the most recent one I remember. If I've read another one before, but I don't think I have. Gothic in that it's a haunted house and happenings in the haunted house. And I love it when stories are like, oh, terrible, terrible things are happening, but the real villain is this. I like it when it's done well, and this was done well here. So I gave this one 4 stars. So for the month of May, I read 1. Foxfire story. 2. You Are Obsolete. 3. The Secret Notebook. 4. 4. Murder to Music. 5. Southeast Native Plant Primer, 225 plants for an earth-friendly garden. 6. Houseplants for all, etc. 7. Monopolized, Life in the Power Age, etc. And 8. It Will Be Us. So, I don't think I'll finish the 100 books. I think now I'm at 70 on Goodreads, or 70 something, 73 something on Goodreads. Um, well, I could, because I'm currently reading 18, and I have more on my I have 8 that I'm currently reading. I think I have like 14 on my shelf. So theoretically, if I really cared to push, if I had nothing else to do, I'm sure I could finish 30 something books this month. But am I going to? More than likely not. But I might finish 100 books on NetGalley. That might hit 100 books right on NetGalley. I think I started back in September, maybe late August, reading books on NetGalley. So, it's an okay pace. But yeah, it'll definitely be less than a year, so that'll be that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you're feeling safe and doing fine. And bye.